You will not believe this was a real sport. Forget the UFC, forget padded gloves and doctors, because long before all that, the ancient Greeks invented a sport so savage, it makes modern MMA look like a joke. It was called Pankration, and it was a main event at the sacred Olympic Games. A fight with almost zero rules where you didn't win a gold medal, you won an olive wreath, and you got to survive. This wasn't just a sport, this was war where athletes prayed for one of two things: victory or a glorious death. So get ready, because today we are digging through the dust and blood of the real ancient Olympics to uncover the story of Pankration, the most brutal combat sport in history. When you think of ancient Greece, you probably picture incredible temples and super smart philosophers. And at the center of it all were the Olympic Games, this sacred festival for the god Zeus. We imagine these perfect athletes competing in noble sports like running. It's a clean, perfect image, right? Wrong. That picture is missing one thing: blood. It's missing the sound of bones snapping and men being choked unconscious in the dirt. Because on the exact same sacred ground where philosophers debated, another kind of art was being perfected: the art of total combat. Pankration, which literally means all strength, was the king of all ancient sports. It debuted at the Olympics in 648 BC and instantly became the fan favorite. And do you know why? Because it was pure, terrifying violence. It stripped away all the rules, leaving a raw, primal fight for survival. The guys who stepped into the sandpit to fight weren't just athletes, they were celebrities, living gods whose wins made them legends. To understand Pankration is to understand a forgotten, brutal side of the ancient world where the line between athlete and warrior was basically non-existent. Like everything in ancient Greece, the story of Pankration starts with actual legends. The Greeks believed the sport was literally invented by the heroes Heracles and Theseus. They said Heracles used Pankration to choke out the giant Nemean lion with his bare hands. And Theseus, he supposedly used it to kill the Minotaur in the labyrinth. These stories are everything. The Greeks didn't see Pankration as just a game. They saw it as the fighting style of the gods. When a fighter stepped into the arena, he was recreating the legendary feats of his culture's greatest heroes. But historically, Pankration was also a soldier's greatest weapon. The legendary Spartan army and Alexander the Great's soldiers all trained in this. It's said that at the Battle of Thermopylae, after their spears and swords broke, the Spartans fought the Persians with their bare hands and teeth, a skill they learned from Pankration. When it officially became an Olympic sport, it was the ultimate warrior tradition. The sport was a mix of boxing and wrestling, but it was so much more than that. It threw out all the rules that made those sports safe. There were no rounds, no time limits, and no weight classes. A fight only ended when one man submitted, was knocked unconscious, or died. This was the ultimate test, and the men who competed were a special breed, ready to win by any means necessary. So what did a Pankration match actually look like? Picture two guys completely naked, covered in olive oil and sand, squaring off under the burning Greek sun. The judge gives the signal and the fight is on, and almost anything goes. There were two phases: standing up and on the ground. While standing, fighters used a mix of boxing and kicking. But unlike boxing, their hands were bare. Punches and hammer fists were aimed right at the head. Kicks were a huge part of it, which was totally illegal in Greek boxing. Fighters launched powerful kicks to the stomach, and some sources even say strikes to the genitals were completely allowed. The goal was simple: knock your opponent out or take him to the ground. And once the fight hit the ground, that's where things got really dark. On the ground, fighters used a terrifying arsenal of joint locks and chokes. Arm bars, shoulder locks, and ankle locks were all designed to snap bones and force a submission. There was a legendary fighter named Sostratus who got the nickname Mr. Fingertips. His entire strategy was to grab his opponent's hand at the start of the match and just break his fingers, one by one, until the other guy quit from the pain. Chokeholds were the fastest way to win and the most common cause of death. There was no tapping out like in MMA. To surrender, a fighter had to raise his index finger. If he couldn't or wouldn't, the fight just kept going. So, what wasn't allowed? The list is unbelievably short. No biting and no eye gouging. That's it. Snapping fingers, kicking a downed opponent, strangulation, all of it was perfectly legal. In fact, the hardcore Spartans thought the Olympic rules were too soft and allowed biting and gouging in their own games. Injuries were constant and horrific. Broken bones, dislocated joints, and massive cuts were just part of it. Death, while not the goal, was a risk every single fighter accepted. Leave a comment below if you know of a forgotten sport with crazier rules than this. I'll wait. The complete insanity of Pankration created absolute legends, men so strong they were basically seen as real-life superheroes. One of the greatest was Theagenes of Thasos. People believed he was the actual son of the god Heracles. As a kid, he supposedly carried a giant bronze statue from the town square all the way home just because he could. His career was unbelievable. He won over 1,400 victory wreaths. The dude was so dominant that after he died, his statue supposedly fell on a guy who hated him and crushed him. Then there was Polydamas of Scotusa, a man whose stories are completely wild. He was an Olympic champion who was said to have killed a lion with his bare hands, just like Heracles. Another time, he supposedly stopped a speeding chariot with just one hand. His fame reached all the way to Persia, where the king challenged him to fight 3 of his best soldiers, the Immortals, all at once. Polydamas allegedly defeated all 3 of them, but maybe the most incredible story is that of Dioxippus. He was so feared that he won the Olympic Pankration title in 336 BC by default. No one dared to fight him. Later, he joined Alexander the Great's army. At a party, he was challenged by one of Alexander's best soldiers, a guy named Choragus. Choragus showed up in full armor with a javelin, a pike, and a sword. Dioxippus showed up naked with nothing but a wooden club. It was like a movie scene. Dioxippus dodged the javelin, shattered the pike with his club, and before Choragus could even draw his sword, Dioxippus took him to the ground, disarmed him, and put his foot on his neck. An unarmed man had just effortlessly humiliated a fully armed warrior. The stories of these champions are amazing, but this next one is so insane, it perfectly captures the victory or death spirit of Pankration. This is the story of Aricion of Phigalia, and it is 100% fact. The year was 564 BC. Aricion was a 2-time champion going for his 3rd Olympic title, which would make him a legend forever. He makes it to the final match, but this time he is in huge trouble. His opponent has him trapped with his legs wrapped around his body and his arm clamped around his neck in a deadly chokehold. The crowd watched as the life drained from their champion. Aricion was turning purple. He was trapped. He was dying. But surrender? Never. As he was blacking out, his trainer shouted, "What a noble epitaph to not surrender at Olympia." Fueled by one last surge of adrenaline, Aricion made his final move. He couldn't break the choke, so he attacked the only thing he could reach, his opponent's foot. With his last ounce of strength, he twisted it. A sickening crack echoed through the arena. He had dislocated the man's ankle. The opponent screamed in agony and instantly raised his finger to submit. The judge raised Aricion's hand. The crowd went wild. Aricion had won his 3rd Olympic title. But as they rushed to celebrate, they realized something horrifying. Arichun was dead. The chokehold had killed him at the exact moment his opponent surrendered. His lifeless body was crowned with the olive wreath and carried home a hero. He is the only athlete in history to win a title after he had already died. His story is the ultimate example of the Pankration spirit, a man who, facing defeat or death, chose to achieve victory through both. So what happened to this insane sport? As the Roman Empire took over Greece, Pankration was seen as barbaric, a relic of a savage past. The final nail in the coffin came in 393 AD, when the Christian emperor Theodosius I banned the Olympic Games. And just like that, for nearly 1,500 years, the bloody arena of Pankration went silent. But the spirit of total combat never really died. When you watch an MMA fight today, you are seeing the ghost of Pankration. The mix of striking and grappling, the kicks, the takedowns, the joint locks, the chokes. It's all a direct descendant of the skills used by guys like Arichun. Of course, modern MMA is way safer. There are rules, rounds, weight classes, and padded gloves. Death is a rare tragedy, not an accepted outcome. But the core question is still the same. Who is the better all-around fighter? Pankration is a brutal reminder of a time when sport and survival were the exact same thing. It shows us a culture that worshipped athletes for their willingness to push the absolute limits of human ferocity. It makes you wonder, have we become more civilized, or have we just lost the insane courage it took to step into that ancient arena, where victory was the only thing that mattered? If you think this is one of the craziest sports in history, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching.